Alright everyone, well this week I wanted to discuss an alternative to using the displacement map. Now, several tutorials back I have used the displacement map to create very interesting effects, and depending on the image you're going to be creating, it works pretty well. But there's also another filter inside Photoshop that you can bring in a custom file and distort the image based on that file. And that's what we're going to do here. What we want to do is I want to take this logo right here, and I want to apply it to the surface of this bottle. But I want it to appear as though this logo is actually made out of glass. I want it like it's raised from the bottle and kind of molded out of glass. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take this logo. As you can see, it's on its own layer with some transparency. So I'm just going to take that and drag and drop it over to my document. Now before I do anything, I'm going to go ahead and create a duplicate. So just in case I need to start over, I don't have to go back to this file and redrag it over. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize that file. Turn off the duplicate and let's go back to the original now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command or Control T to bring up Free Transform, and I'll hold down the Shift option, or that would be Shift Alt, on a Windows machine. And I'm just going to scale this proportionally toward the center there, and I want to get this placed right about where the logo would be. And obviously I'm going to go up here outside the area and just rotate it ever so slightly. And we'll just position that logo right about where we think it would need to be, and we'll press Enter. So the position is correct. Now we need to prepare a file that we can use to displace the glass or create the beveled glass effect. So I'm going to go and I'm going to create in my layers panel. Let's just drag this out so you can get a better idea what's going on here. So I've got that layer selected that has the logo on it. I'm going to press Command or Control and then click the new layer icon. It will pop a new layer right beneath that layer. And I'm going to go over here, I'm going to fill this layer with black. So I'm going to bring black to my foreground there and just press Option Delete. And there we have it. Now, we lost the logo, of course, because the logo is filled with black as well. So I'm going to highlight that layer, lock the transparency, bring white to my foreground. Again, press Option Delete. And that's Alt Backspace on a Windows machine. So now I have the logo white over black. And if I turn off both those layers, you can see that logo is still in alignment, but now we've got it against the background. This is important because when we bring this file in here, if I were to save just this logo out, just this logo layer, and we brought it in through the filter, it wouldn't be placed right. It needs a file that's the same dimensions as the overall image, and that's what this layer, this black layer fill is. So let's highlight this layer and do one more thing before we save this out. I'm going to highlight the logo layer, go under the filter menu, go down here to blur, and give it a slight blur. Don't give it too much of a blur. Now, we're not seeing a blur now because the transparency is locked. Do make sure you unlock the transparency before you go applying a filter. Again, let's go down here, Gaussian blur, and we're going to give it a very slight blur. In fact, 2 pixels is probably going to be just fine, so let's go ahead and click OK. Now, I'm not going to merge any of these layers down. Here's a cool little trick when you want to save out a flattened version of your file, but don't necessarily want to flatten the file you're working in. Just go under File, go to Save As, and then make sure we're saving it to the desktop, and let's go ahead and rename it, and we'll call it Glass Label. Go down here where it says Save, just uncheck the layers and make sure that As a Copy is set. And what that's going to do is basically what you would normally do. It's going to flatten your image and then save it out as a single layer PSD file. So do all that, click Save. Look on our desktop, there's the glass label file. It's a flattened, layered file. Let's go ahead and close that. So it's a flattened file, and we're back inside our working file, and all the layers are still intact. So let's go ahead and turn these layers off. We don't need them for the moment. Back on our glass bottle, I'm going to go ahead and create a duplicate of that, just so we're not messing with the original should we have to go back and start over. And on that copy, let's go under the filter menu, go down here to Distort, and choose Glass. How about that? We're going to use glass to create a glass effect. So, as you can see, we don't see anything yet. If you go up here into the settings here, we're going to go under the texture, and notice we've got a label. You can choose different things like canvas, frosted. And these are all overall effects that get applied to the overall image. But if you go into this little menu here and go out to load texture, you can go ahead and load anything you've created. And all we got to do is look for that file we created, which is glass label. And when I click load, watch what happens. Pops it right on that bottle. And we can adjust the distortion here, as you can see. Smoothness. Give us a very different effect. Let's bring that up or down a little bit there. And notice what it's doing, because it's a glass, it's picking up the ice reflection here, as you can see on the sides, and reflecting it on the side of the letters. Like it's been really raised, and that side surface is picking up the glass that's off to the side here. So depending on how much of a distortion you apply, will reflect more or less of it. So we'll keep that probably at around 16. And you can increase the smoothness. You can see it just too high of a smoothness just removes all the detail altogether, so that's not really what we want. In fact, I'm probably going to take the smoothness all the way down to 1, just so we can see the logo and everything. Now the scaling will tend to leave it 100% because the file we imported is the exact same dimensions as our original file. So if you see, if I take the scaling up or down, all it's doing is just repositioning as it scales down or up the logo. But we're going to go ahead and leave it at 100%, just like that. Now, if you find that you're applying this glass filter and it doesn't quite look right, simply try and uncheck or check the invert feature. So in this case, it looks like checking it on tends to look the best. By inverting it, it doesn't look so realistic, depending on what effect you're going for. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it checked on, and then we'll go ahead and click OK. And there we have our logo embossed right there on the glass, and it looks completely realistic. And it's an alternative to using the displacement map. If we tried to use the displacement map, all it would have done was kind of like twisted and bent around the pixels. But by using that glass filter, we're able to make it a little bit more realistic right there on the bottle.